The jurors from the Chad Daybell trial sat down with Nate Eaton, and y'all, they saw all the same stuff that we've been talking about. And we're going to talk about the highlights of his interview with them in today's video. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. Sofa's back there. I'm sitting in front of it. And today we're going to be continuing our discussion on the Chad Daybell case. Now, for those that have not followed this or are new to it, Chad Daybell has recently been convicted in several different crimes, those against Lori Daybell's children, JJ and Tylee, as well as his former wife, Tammy Daybell. The case is very layered, very deep. That is literally superficial level, but they just convicted him and they did sentence him to the DP. Now, what we're going to be specifically doing in this video is we're going to be watching the jurors sit down with Nate Eaton and talk about the trial and all that type of stuff. And we're going to talk about the insights of it. If you're new here, what I like to do is put some clips up and use those as talking points. This is from East Idaho News. This is not the full interview. I highly suggest sitting and watching it. I've just picked out pieces that I personally want to comment on. Also, side note, I heard so many people mention it at CrimeCon that they were sad to see, almost like I've been following Nate Eaton. I've gotten to know him through this case. I'm going to, miss him type thing. Nate Eaton is East Idaho News, right? But he's more than just that. He's an amazing human being. We will speak to some of this as we get into this about what other people have said about him involved in the case and whatnot. I've met him. He is absolutely a stellar reporter and a human being. You can just get that energy off of him. So don't feel like because this case is over that you have no reason to check in with Nate. He covers many different cases, and it doesn't really matter if he's talking about, this case with the empathy and the detail to the victims that he does, or if he's talking about his local weather, right? He just has a good energy and a good vibe about him, and I implore you to follow him on all forms of social media. So that being said, I just had to get that out there because so many people said that, and I get it, I feel it, but I literally listen to the man, just whatever he has to say. He just has something about him. He has that it factor, but he is the real deal. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go ahead and put this first clip up. Now, I skipped over the jurors like saying my name and stuff like that. It is in there if you're interested in it, but I just didn't want to put that here specifically. So let's go ahead and get into the first clip and we'll talk about it.
I don't even know how to describe it. It's insane that we just went through this.
2.5 months of our lives of just every day learning more and more and seeing more and more things. I think you forget about the whole picture until you get a chance to look back and go, you can't write this stuff. I mean, you really can't. And I think I lost track of it when you're in the middle of it, of how big and how crazy this whole thing was and how many people it affected.
She brings up such an excellent point here. This case is so vast and involves so many people and so many different storylines and offshoots and this and that and whatnot. It's unfathomable once you get in it. For a jury to enter into this and just be dumped all this, and like Nate will say at some point with these clips, y'all didn't even hear the half of it. People who followed it and have been looking at it, say, from the outside in, like the whole context of it. I mean, it's just like they didn't hear the half of it, right? But also to hear her talk about, and I'm sitting here and imagining them, and they'll also get into this statement I'm about to make, where they become victims of this case as well, right? Cases like this affect many people in many different ways. They've come in here, they've been kind of yanked out of their lives. They're doing their duty, and my hat's off to them for that. But it takes its toll, and then you're kind of like, okay, finished. And I mean, it's the things they've seen, the things they've heard. You can't ever unring that, and it lasts a lifetime.
I feel a lot the same way, as the impact that it's had on so many people, and now there's 18 more of us that we didn't ask to do it. It was our civil duty. We did it, and now it will forever affect each and every one of us for the rest of our life. We have to live with that decision.
And our families.
And our families. And I think that's a huge impact on every single one of us.
She said it so eloquently. I mean, this is the thing, these cases and these perpetrators, the Loris, the Chads, the Letitias, all the people that we follow that do these heinous acts, the trickle effect of it. I mean, you heard her. Not only are they dealing with the decision of taking someone's life technically because they gave him the DP, so there's that, whether, whatever your thoughts are on it or your beliefs and whatnot, that's going to take a toll for them, right? Also, their family members. I mean, you'll hear them talk as we watch this. I came home, I didn't want to talk to anybody, I stayed in bed for 2 days. I mean, it takes a toll in that last lifetime. The pictures that they have seen, that thank God I've never seen them, you can't unsee that. The things that they learn that happened to Tylee and JJ and Tammy, you can't unhear that. And then also knowing evil is real, evil exists, evil was in my own hemisphere, you know what I'm saying? You can't unchange that. And especially in a case like this that involves, I mean, multiple people, but children at it, but the lying, the deceit, the cavalierness of, you know, Lord, no, y'all see, you're gonna see, nothing's wrong, the kids are okay. That level of just, how do people like this exist, right? So I really appreciate how she summed that up and expressed that for the jurors and what they've gone through.
It really hit me hard to be on this stuff firsthand, to realize just how vile mankind is.
I mean, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. We watch these cases and we follow them, and you walk away from it and you're like, okay, just think about like people you pass in the street and stuff like that. Like, okay, they're like me. They're human like me, right? But what makes Letitia, what makes Lori, what makes Chad, what makes them capable of doing the things that they've done and then doubling down on it, heels in the sand of, I'm right, you can't tell me any different, I'm going to go on TV and try and prove you wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like that type of thing. The things that anger us about these cases. You know, and that's one thing for me in watching these, you know, and I spoke to many of you at CrimeCon about this, you know, but I'll say it again here. You know, the psychology of these cases is one thing that draws me to them, and it's a double-edged sword. Number one, the psychology of the criminal. What makes them do something like this? What is different about their brain that enables them to do this? And not just a heat of the moment, I got angry, not that I'm saying that's justifiable, you know, but a calculated, I looked at these children as pawns to get this type thing, right? But then there's also the level of the survivors, the victims, how they are put into a position that nobody asked to be in that, right? Nobody wants their loved one to be taken away like this. Nobody wants to be victimized like this, right? I mean, who, seriously. But they're thrust into it. And they have to overcome, and they have to get up the next day, and they have to keep going step by step, putting one foot in front of the other. The psychology of what the human mind can overcome, the resilience of human life and the condition of being human itself is beautiful and fascinating to me. And that's one of the things that really draws me to this, and learning about the victims, the survivors, and how they have managed to keep going. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, you know, they drop us in there into the court and into the whole system, and we're there for 2 months, and it's our lives for that time, and then we're yanked out, and here we are now. And like I know I still feel very connected to it, and I've been researching it in some of my free time since then.
Now, an interesting tidbit about this gentleman that just spoke, and I'll do a separate video on his interview with Nate. He was a juror who overslept one day, and bless his heart, I'm sure I bet he just, you know what, his pants that day. Can you imagine a case like this? Well, he ended up getting selected, though. I mean, so he made it through against all odds with that. And he's a very well-spoken, very, you know, well-balanced young man, it seems like, right, to be on the jury and make these decisions. I trust that he did quite a good job with it. But hearing him talk about, like, you know, he wasn't really that involved in it, but now it's like he's researching it. You're going to poke around, that kind of thing. But look at how involved all of us were really for years, and this, you've been following it. And so it as intense as the trial as you just get, you know, completely immersed into it, right? And then it's over with, and it's like, especially when justice is served, like it has been in this. And I feel bad to say when justice is served, because it doesn't change what happened to them. It doesn't bring them back, right? And so it's like bittersweet to me, at least, to say that, but at least, especially with Chad, right? I mean, come on, we all really were hoping for that sentence, okay? But to hear the gentleman here back to that talk about, you know, we're immersed in it and then we're kind of plucked out of it, I can only imagine what that would feel like, you know, because it's almost like this, you're going to want to continue to figure out this trajectory that you're now on. It's like, here's this new world I never knew about. I've been thrust into it. You're going to form a bond with these other jurors and these people that you don't really have with anybody else on the planet, right? I would be curious to see if they stay in touch and if they keep in touch with each other and kind of find a way to work through that. And I would hope that a lot of them would sit down with maybe some type of, you know, therapy or something like that moving forward, because I know I will be signing up for it pronto.
I went to sleep at 7:30 that night, and I literally did not wake up out of my bedroom until 7:30 the next night. I was emotionally, physically, everything drained. And I personally turned my phone off. I didn't want to talk to anybody, didn't want to talk about it, and then I got up, and then today's been a little bit different. You know, I've talked to my mother, my son, my daughter a little bit, but I didn't want to talk to anybody for a couple days. I just wanted to digest what.
I mean, amen, girl. Can you imagine walking out of that? I would have been in bed for 3 days straight, just trying to recover from that. I can't imagine. And then, like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, coming out of that, and it's like, okay, you're back to life. The kids want your attention. The grass needs to be cut. The bills need to be paid. And it's like, you've just learned about the darkest part of humanity itself, right? And then you're back to normal life. It blows my mind. And my hat goes off to them to sit on the jury like that and be able to do that. I think that is amazing.
Yeah.
Was there a moment where you said guilty or a witness?
One of the texts when it said, it's time, I have a plan for the children to go, or to get rid of the children, however it was worded. When they had that, and they'd already built up, of course, all of the, Alex was here at this time, and they talked to each other 10 times before that happened, and it was like, yeah.
Or what about the, I'm grieving, but not for the reason why
I'm sad,
everybody
but not why they
thinks.
think
When he's
I am.
texting
his
Lori the
wife's
day after his
funeral.
wife.
That solidified it
Right.
for Lori, but I think when he started saying, I'm going to turn up the pain and turn down the tolerance,
For
and then
4-year-old.
started talking about, is there a plan for the children? Do we have a perfectly orchestrated plan for the children?
Makes me sick to my damn stomach to listen to it again. Do we have a perfectly orchestrated plan for the children? Cannot roll my damn eyes hard enough. And then she wants to talk about it. I'm talking about Lori. You'll see. We're hiding them from Kay. I don't care what she's diagnosed with. I'm sorry. It just runs up one side and down the next with me. But that's here nor there. Now, listening to the jurors, and you see me, what I get to going over here, I'm sort of like, amen, that's what I'm doing over here. I know the volume's probably off on me when the thing's going. I get excited about it. You see me over here pointing like y'all aren't even listening to it, right? But anyways, so, yeah. I mean, all the things, right? At least this group of the jurors that chose to spoke out literally are calling out all the stuff that we've been screaming at our phones, at our TVs, however you've been watching this, right? And it was so, satisfying to hear them hearing the same stuff that we did. And we're going to get deeper into it. This is just the beginning. But questioning these same things, especially when they get to his children taking the stand. My God.
One of the things that was telling and still is to me is how all of Lori's family were dark and all of Chad's outside of Tammy were light. That's when I kind of went, you know what, this is the mastermind behind this, at least in my opinion. He's eliminating things that aren't close to him that are getting in the way of what he wants. And that was one of the turning points for me.
I mean, sing it loud for the ones in the back, brother. That right there. Now listen, if you follow my other channel, I have the live chat podcast channel, whatever you want to call it. We did a talk on this already, but I went and I listened to Summer Shiflett talk to Nate Eaton at CrimeCon, right? So I did a live chat on the other channel. Very well spoken, got up there, told her perspective from her side, right? And it was, I thought, very brave of her to go up there and do that. The reason I'm bringing that up now is because one of the points that she brings up, and Nate Eaton has posted this in another interview that he did with her, is she says that Chad was the leader, Chad was the mastermind. So when I heard the jury saying the same thing, I was like, huh. Now, also, people will also bring up where, this is not to excuse Lori. Okay, let's just be very clear about that, right? This is not to excuse Lori and her part in the manipulation and the playing Chad, but so many points were brought up that I had not considered. Jurors brought them up, Summer brought them up about Chad and his leadership and how he seems to have done this. And I guess part of it is because, like, for us, when we watch this, and I've said this in the things, if you watch this about Chad, when we watch it's literally like this. It's like, seriously? Like, what? Who? Huh? You're following this dude? I mean, I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't see the charming personality. Take looks aside from it, right? Like, I'm talking about, like, literally, like, just getting people to follow you and all this type of stuff. There's nothing there. And multiple times we'll hear this, right? So he's not someone that in my world I could see getting people to follow. And as bad as it is and stuff like that, if you look back on some of these people, whether we agree with them, whatever, you can kind of see, I can see how they drew people in. Think of Charles Manson. Yeah, he's creepy and all that type of stuff. But in his younger days when he was doing this, you could see how he was up there doing his thing and doing all. He had this thing that just worked, and you could see it pulling people in. David Koresh, he had this thing about him, right? Chad doesn't have that thing. There's like negative of the thing, right? It's like there's nothing there. So that's why I'm just like, oh, there's no way that he was the leader. Like, he has zero personality, but all the points that are brought up, and we'll discuss them as we get further, it makes more sense to me. Now, granted, I do think him and Lori were, basically working off each other and manipulating each other, that type of stuff. But I see where he did these very traditional things of separating her and doing this and doing that, just like this gentleman here said. Chad's family wasn't dark. Only Lori's was. He sequestered her off. He got her exactly where he wanted her. Again, I'm not calling her a victim at all in this. I don't consider her one at all. I consider her a perpetrator. But I can see it in a different light, if that makes sense. Let's go on to the next clip.
Yeah, none
I
of his
agree.
children.
He had his children where he needed them. They were going to back him 100%.
And the one statement where he said, you will be unencumbered? Is that the word he used?
Yeah.
Unencumbered?
Mm-hmm.
Basically free of everything that could be an obstacle to us.
Yeah.
I just can't fathom in my mind, though, I still can't get it, is how can two people, three with Alex if he were still alive, go through all this, do all this, bury them on your own property, and feel like you'll never get caught?
That's what I understand.
And that they never did anything wrong.
Aim, damn it, girl. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. This jury's on point, right? Are they not just like hitting all the same talking points we did? Oh, yeah. That's part of like, why didn't you think, how did you think you could get away with this? It's the audacity and the entitlement for me. I mean, literally so emboldened, right? And one thing that I think that has been a changing aspect for me in seeing this go full circle around is, yes, Lori seems to be officially diagnosed with this delusional disorder thing, whatever. I would venture to say Chad is too, because I don't see how anyone could not have something and think this way, right? But the level of, and I go back and forth because I'm like, well, if Lori is diagnosed with that, of course she's going to have A, B, and C, but even then, so the level of hypocrisy and entitlement and planning. I guess one thing for me, leading up to like the trials, is in my world there's always this level of like, almost like the delusion was so strong there was no planning. It was just this like blind, like, oh, we're just aimlessly going and taking lives because we're in this delusion. But then when I realized, oh, there was massive planning to this in addition to the delusional thinking, which I don't think Chad has the same delusion as Lori, and she could be, for all I know, faking it, trying, like, that's her shtick. She's like, I've got to really like ride this out. I mean, I don't know, right? I don't talk to her. I don't know her personally, any of that stuff. But from what I can gather, talking to people who do deal with her, it seems to be that she, girl gone, okay? Now, again, this is not to discount her culpability in anything. I don't consider her a victim at all. I consider her just as guilty as Chad, and honestly thought she would get the same sentence. She's very lucky she didn't. Very lucky. Very lucky. But yeah, hearing the jury just hit all these high points here, were the questions and all that kind of stuff that we had, again, it was so satisfying, so absolutely satisfying. And also to see that, yes, they thought they could get away with it, but they didn't.
No.
Like, there's no remorse.
That's
there.
what you call an ego, though, to think that you can bury these children on your property and will never get caught.
Narcissist.
Yeah, narcissist from the beginning.
But they didn't believe that what they were doing was wrong because they believed in one of their past worlds, their past lives, that they had repented and were forgiven for anything forever and ever, and all their future lives, like it was a gimme, like, doesn't matter.
I mean, they've got their damn number pegged. They got their number. Chad doesn't stand a damn chance against this jury right here. I mean, exactly. I mean, all the narcissism, all of it, right? They saw all of this. And it was so satisfying because, again, remember, this jury hasn't sat here and like, think of all the people that we watch out there, right? Like these other channels that like, the Hidden True Crime is one. They do amazing interviews with like all different forms of family members, from Chad's to Lori, you name it, right? And that's just to name one. You know, all these other things that we can see on YouTube and whatnot, where you get this full picture of all that's going on. Well, the jury doesn't know it. They don't know that, but I bet you they do now. You know what I'm saying? You know they're burning up damn YouTube, right? I would have not made it out of the damn parking lot. When they were like, you're done, you can do what you will, look up the case, talk about whatever. You would have seen me go on a YouTube binge it would have taken me out a month. I would have been like, look, we're gonna need to file for assistance or something because I ain't budging, okay? Don't ask me to do nothing besides YouTube, okay? Because I mean, look at all the information that they're now like going to be like, well, let's research this. And they're going to see we made the right decision. I don't think they have any doubts about it. But the more you go down the rabbit hole of it, the more you see 100% these people never deserve to see the light of day.
And the fact that he didn't say anything, that he had the chance to say something, even to defend himself, to have some sort of remorse, to even if it was to say, I didn't do this, that really is like, well, that's the final straw. I mean, there's nothing.
No allocution, no mitigating factors.
No mitigating factors. You know, he wouldn't even try to defend himself.
It makes me wonder if he almost wanted.
He said in the back of the cruiser, I'm not coming back.
I'm not coming back.
And that one of those that, you know, it's like, why would he say that if he didn't think he did this? So that was always in the back of my mind as well.
Y'all, this part right here, I was screaming this from the rooftops. I'm not trying to sound like, oh, I came up with that idea. I'm sure everybody was. So that's what I mean in the context of when he was in the back of that cruiser, Emma, here's the keys to the house. Here's all my money. Here's this. Here's that. I'm not coming back. Why would you do that? If you, for one bit of a second, thought you were innocent or if you were in a delusion, right? He knew his grits were okay. You know, now also her point, I almost wondered if he wanted the death penalty. He might, because again, with him and Lori and stuff like that, it's like, well, let's apply your own thinking to yourself. You're a martyr. You're next damn thing to Jesus, right? A God. It shouldn't be a thing for you to lose the physical body in this life and move on. You know, and I go back and forth with stuff like this. So, because I talked to some of you at CrimeCon about this, where I was like, look, if I was Chad, this is what I would have done. Whatever the case situation is, I would have taken this whole thing. I want to spare the victims. Like when they gave me the DP, like it was official, like, you got this, you got anything to say for yourself? I would have been like, look, I want to spare the victims on this. I want to exhaust my appeals. I want to waive all of them. Take me to the damn chair. Tomorrow. Think of Eileen Warnhouse. Did I kind of say her name wrong? If you are familiar with true crime, this is a very famous case of I'm not going to say the world's first lady SK, but in that realm, right? Very notorious. She was like, I'm done. And even that takes years, right? When you take that road. And she kind of wavered back and forth a little bit, but what I'm getting at is if I was Chad, that's 100% what I would do. Because that's the easy way out. That's where I'm conflicted about the DP sentence. Because to me, I'm like, the true horror would be to sit in a cell for the rest of your life. Right? Like, how horrible is that? Okay. Now, Chad's experience versus Lori's experience is going to be vastly different because male prisons are notoriously a little bit different than female prisons. I've looked at so many damn YouTube stations about people talking about people who have done time in a variety of different types of prisons, saying like what Chad's time will be like, and they've gone from it's not going to be that bad to he ain't going to live, the whole 9 yards, right? And they're basically talking about it all depends on his demeanor and how he comes at people and whatnot, which I think, again, there's nothing there, right? So that might be a saving grace to him. But he's also going to be very sequestered, so there's going to be that. He has a miserable existence ahead of himself. So to me, if I was him, I would be begging for old Sparky, right? I think of the two, Lori's going to have it worse by not getting that. You know what I mean? Because to me, that would just be worse. But again, if she's in a delusion, I'm kind of thinking to myself, it might not be any skin off her nose type situation. Whereas to Chad, I think sitting in a cell for the rest of his life would be worse. But we'll see. The proof is in the pudding. And I think that what we'll see is depending on how he acts about the appeals. Because again, he's going to be bored now. It's like, okay, let's appeal it. But again, I would be like, wave it, go on, fire it up, let's get this done with. You know, because even that, like I said, will take years. So anyways, let's go to the next clip.
And why would somebody, him, his attorney, whatever, not give us enough mitigating factors to state that he should get life in prison and not the death penalty?
Right, the or his closing arguments where they were after Chad, he was a victim. Lori and Alex were after life insurance money from Chad, except for the 9th of October and the 19th of October, in the 2 instances when there was threat on Tammy's life and then took her life. If it were Chad, Tammy would be the insurance, the beneficiary, not Lori. So if that's the best thing you have to try to give us reasonable doubt, that was
That
was bad.
You said about
I absolutely love hearing them talk about the different testimony and whatnot, witnesses. We'll get further into it and how it completely backfired on them. Again, Pryor had nothing to work with, okay? There was so much evidence against Chad, the fact that he took it to trial. Now, they probably didn't, I don't remember if they offered him a plea deal or anything like that, but if they did, it probably wasn't good, right? But the fact that he took this to trial with the evidence against him, there's really nothing else you can say. And to hear them justifying that or confirming it and being like, yeah, you didn't even give us any level of, you didn't even try, right? Like she'll say at some point later probably, basically he almost acted like annoyed, like, okay, well, here we go, you got me. And I think probably that's how he felt. It was like he was just going through the motions.
Did anything from the defense stick or make you think, that's a good point?
Ironically for me, the one thing from all the defense witnesses that factored into my opinion and decision was his forensic analyst, whatever you called him, who said that was the first time I at least heard that Tylee had fractured skull and jawbone, and that didn't work in his favor. But that is really the only thing that I drew from them that contradicted anything else. I hadn't heard that before.
I think they hurt his case worse.
I think they hurt his case.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, his witnesses definitely hurt
The
his
witness,
case.
even the one who questioned the asphyxiation.
Oh, absolutely, because she didn't have all the, I have to give it to the prosecution, like, did you have this report? Did you have this report? Did you have this report? Nope,
They did their job.
They didn't have all the factors that played into the case.
Yeah, his ME said you take all this into consideration.
Correct.
And then when they were asked, did you look at any of this? No. So you didn't do exactly what you just said you need to do.
Amen. Again, this jury's good, y'all. They caught all these little things, right? But again, seriously, it's just like, this is where Pryor had nothing. Smoke and mirrors. When all your witnesses are getting up there, all the way down to essentially your own children and making you look even worse, this is what also, obviously we get the guilt factor, right? You can never know until the jury, comes out and says their thing, right? You can never predict it. It can be so obvious, but then, whatever. So there's that. But as the witnesses kept piling up for, what's his name, Chad, and just helped the prosecution, y'all, it was literally like the victims were just singing lullabies from the grave for us, right? It was like poetry, okay? Like it was meant to be. And that's one of the things that I think is so beautiful in some of these cases that we watch, when you can almost, like, whatever you want to call it, whether it's God, the godlike factor, or whatever, these things where it's like they're speaking from the grave, from where they were put way before their time, and these factors come up, and it's so confirming, because I know not every case gets that, right? There's unsolved cases out there. There's families who still can't put their heads down at nighttime and go to sleep because they don't know what happened. They want these answers. So when we see it and we see them not getting away with it, that's what I'm looking for. Not getting away with it, right? Because that's what's so angering, is when you see and it's like, oh my God, they're getting away with it. They're getting away with it. He got away with this lie. He got away with this. Like, he almost got away with Tammy, and they'll talk about this, but when you see it backfire, it's just like, oh my God, it's like poetry.
What about the testimony of his children?
Oh my gosh,
That was awful.
awful.
That was scripted.
It was scripted, it was painful,
And the rebuttal witnesses.
Amen. This part, I want to go kiss all of them. That part right there, can I get a damn amen louder in the damn back? Whatever you want to say about it, okay? Look, and I talked to so many of y'all at Crime Con about this part. Oh my God, y'all. Emma, can we please talk about Emma? Clearly drinking the Chad Kool-Aid. This is another thing, so many people brought this up, about he has her sequestered from her own family. The same thing, right? He's done the same thing. He's able to split people off, isolate them, do this very cult leaderish type behavior vibe, right? Now, Garth, I felt like, I think Garth is very on the fence. I think Garth is very bothered. I think Garth, he's There's a different vibe, let's put it that way. Emma and her husband, especially her husband, making those comments. I'd be anything but a police officer. The cops shouldn't be driving by our house. They 100% are like, this is, so I'm making this up, but you know, it's my opinion. They're 100% like, no, Tammy's dark. She's a zombie. She had to go. She was awful. That's what I think that their mindset is about it, because that's how they acted. That's how they talked about it. They had no respect for life itself, and especially the victims.
The Halloween kid, he had no reason to lie, in my opinion, and
Right.
completely
Exactly.
refuted Garth. The recorded conversation from Officer, was it Hope? Whichever one went to go deliver the autopsy.
Oh, right.
Mattingly.
Do you want to?
Mattingly, thank
do you want to?
You want,
yeah.
and everything she said contradicted what was on that tape. So it's just, they lost all credibility in my mind based on the rebuttal witnesses.
Right.
And we
Yeah.
did talk amongst us that, you know, how sad for those kids to be that brainwashed that they actually believe that he had nothing to do with it, or is it the fact that they're scared of him?
Excellent question. And you have to wonder, are they scared? Because look at how much unaliving turns up around this man. What if Garth spoke out? What would his sister do? What would her husband do? Would they come after him? And they brought this up, and I'm not sure I have the clip here now, but I'll say it because the thoughts coming through my mind. Who's next? All these other people that, oh, the Melanie's children are dark, this or that. Who's to say he doesn't keep going? Who's to say he's not still a threat, right? And I personally think he is, and they'll bring this up, the jurors will, one of them. Now, also, you know, just the whole part about the rebuttal witness, the kid, I can't think of his name right now, but Garth's former friend, who was like, no, Garth had a totally different story about Tammy. I mean, why would he lie? It's literally the same thing I probably said in my video. Why would he lie? He was completely removed. Like, he was very believable. Chad's own children, you could just tell they were lying. They were just making stuff up. And again, to not come to the defense of your mother on any level, it's horrifying.
And you heard that he talks to his daughter every day.
Well, he did, right?
He did. I don't know.
He did, you're
We don't
right.
know if that's going to be able to continue, but that was one of the
Yeah.
questions that we asked post on the drive back to get our stuff. But I don't know if we got an answer to it.
He will have very limited contact with the outside world.
Like no
Almost
personal
no
visitors.
no in-person visitors, and he can have like a FaceTime call. We don't know how often, but basically it's 23 hours of solitary confinement.
And I hope he's sitting in solitary thinking about his every move that he has done and action that he's done that's led him up to there. I think that Chad sitting in solitary and doing that, it will get to him eventually. I think he'll become worse. I think he'll become almost like Lori, like gone. Just like gone, like smoked. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's already kind of smoked. That's just my general term for like shot. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just done. I think that he'll just go deeper into his mindset and probably become more, I don't know if angry is the right word, but vengeful, because I think he's a vengeful person. I think he's full of himself, utterly full of himself, and he uses his position and things to take lives.
Your thoughts about seeing those autopsy photos? Is that the hardest days?
For me,
Hard,
I mean, I
but-
broke down. It was, when I left the court, I literally broke down. It was difficult. It was, to me, how can somebody be that cruel to a child who they trust, that person as they trust more than anybody in the whole entire world?
Their protector did
Their
that to
protector,
them.
and, you know, he's awake, he's obviously scratching. They duct tape him so he can't move. They put a bag over his head. I mean, all of them were heinous, but you just think, this poor little boy, somebody doing this to him.
My God. I mean, hearing the details, I mean, thank God I wasn't on the jury. I couldn't have done it. So my hat's off to him. Hearing the details of that, and again, whenever they talk about that, all I'm doing is literally envisioning Lori and that little smirk on her face. I literally, it pisses me off so badly. And Chad talking like they're just untouchable. You know what I mean? Like on the phone, like they did something. Like they have helped the world out, right? And Lori and her whatever, and Chad and his whatever. You know, and to think, you know, as Summer said in the phone call to Lori where she was screaming and yelling at her, you're on the beach in Hawaii playing a ukulele, taking wedding pictures, and that just happened to JJ and Tylee? And that's what you're doing? I to this day, years later, it still floors me. And I don't even know the people, right? I don't even like personally know, like it's not like they're my family or I'm related to them. You know, and I'm not trying to say that like that makes it better and different, but it's in my world, I'm almost like, I could see the level of like anger that it builds up if I had like a personal connection, if that makes sense, because it feels like that. Maybe because I've gotten to know the people, the victims through the cases and watching them. They're humans to us, if that makes sense. And so that's what it feels like. So that jab of seeing Lori on the beach and Chad and that stupid ukulele and that stupid little pose that she does. I mean, knowing that they know what really happened to those kids and that they have literally justified that in their minds of that is okay. I cannot.
And they're the people he trusts most in the entire world.
Well, Tylee, I just can only hope that however she died, it was quick and painless, because just the thought of the things that were done to her,
yes,
it's just, it's
like which
unbelievable.
came first.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
the quick
And to see
part
that
was
picture
first.
of them in Yellowstone with Alex and the two of them,
That
and to
was
think that
surreal.
within 24 hours, she's cut up, pickaxed, chopped, burnt, and buried.
And
It's
where's
just,
the rest of her?
yeah.
Right.
And Tammy was no less heinous.
I mean, it's like, listen to this. It's horrible. And I like that she brought the point up of seeing that picture, because again, and the fact of like the, you know, children, their caretakers, their parents, whoever it is in the situation, that is the most trusted person in a child's life. And when that trust is betrayed, especially to this degree, you know, and you sit there and you look at those photos when they're at the park, knowing what was waiting for them. How could Lori and Alex be? Because I personally think, like, them sitting there smiling and laughing those pictures with them, that was their send-off. Like, they knew what they were going to do. So it was almost like this one last whatever, you know. I just, there's no words for it.
I mean, this is somebody that he's married to for 30 years, raises 5 children with, and I don't know, to believe that he was present or he was around there and he knew that she was dying and a suffocation, asphyxiation.
I mean, that's the thing. And again, some of this stuff, it's like, to know the exact details of what happened, number one, I don't want to, but number two, only Chad and the victims and Alex will know and Lori will know, right? And I'm sure they will all take that to their grave, just as Alex did. You know, but just like she said, you know, to turn like that instantly on someone that's you've raised 5 kids with, you've been with her for 30 years, you have all this stuff, and then to also see how the children spoke of her, because it lets me know, oh, this wasn't just turning a dime like this. He has been grifting the kids and grooming them to have this opinion, this low opinion of Tammy for probably years, right? And working up to the perfect, I almost said the perfect storm, oh my God. Oh, I didn't mean it, but you know what I'm saying. The perfect set of circumstances to arrive, that being Lori and all this stuff that just collided, and that was like, okay, now here we go, right? I mean, you as Tammy, you would never sit there and think that this was a possibility. And then God bless the woman if there was any way that she could even know beyond that of, and my own flesh and blood children are going to get up there and try and excuse it away to protect that monster. That's the other part that blows my mind.
Was it as bad as you thought it would be going into it, or worse?
It was worse.
It was
worse.
It was
Far
worse
worse.
because you find out more details of how calculated and planned and uncaring and
Greed.
unemotional.
Greedy.
And yeah, all he wanted was to be able to go have sex with this 126-pound blonde goddess. I mean, that was his whole, that's what he wanted to do.
I mean, seriously, as pathetic as it is, it's true. You know, just like she said, she summed it up perfectly. Once you learn all the details of this that went on, and then you're like, and it was over this over here. And that's for Chad's side. For Lori, it's like, girl, what? So you could be some little goddess and lead the 144,000? I mean, seriously? What? We're made up of the same stuff, like arms, legs, flesh, of it. These two people are, right? That's what blows my mind, right? I'm just like, huh? Like, what? Monsters in disguise. You know, but clearly, and people will talk, especially about Lori. I mean, you hear this from a range of people, from Kay to Summer to this person, that person, that there was a time where she was normal. She was a great mom. She loved the kids and all this, you know, and it just progressed them. Whatever it is that struck her, this disorder, this delusional thing, whatever, it just went, boom, you know, down. And again, I don't say that to give her an excuse or reasoning, because I just feel like there is no excuse or reasoning for that. But in my mind, where I need to categorize something, because when I take her and Chad and look at them separately, with Lori to sit here and say, okay, if she legitimately has something going on, not that I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's fine, but it's like, okay, my brain can start to sort through that a little bit, not really, but a tiny bit. But then I come over to Chad and I'm like, wait, you don't seem to have, this was all just power, greed, lust, like all these things, right? And I can't with that. And then I come back over to Lori after that, and I'm like, I don't care what they say you might have. It's almost like, yeah, you seem to be in this delusion, but on the same note, there's this level of like pre-planning. And so that's where I have this issue of what might be a delusion or this or that, but it's also like, it's right or wrong because of the hiding and the pre-planning. Because if you were truly just like not of sound mind, whatever, I feel like there would have been this level of, okay, well, we're going to act accordingly, like we could get caught. But then maybe that's where the entitlement came. Like they just looked at it like, we're untouchable. And that could be the answer to that portion of it.
Did any of you ever make eyes with him? Have a thought of compassion or sympathy or anything?
He made eyes with me one time, like we stared at each other for a little while, and then he did one of these. And then he just looked away.
Yeah.
And to me, I felt like, was that oh well, I know I'm done here, or what was that? But no expressions other than that.
I mean, exactly. Here's the thing. I've said this 100 times in this video. I'll say it 100 times more. Listening to them pick up on the same stuff that we've seen with Chad, like number one, just in general, but number two, during the trial especially. Yeah, that whole thing, as she nailed on the head, it's just like, sorry, I guess you got me. Are we done here? That whole thing of just expressionless. It's bizarre, but again, so satisfying to hear them mention it and that they saw this and they noticed it.
And I locked eyes with him several times. I mean, he was directly in front of me, if you will. And I made a pact with myself that I'm not going to be the first one to break it. But during that whole time, you were just looking at a shell. I never saw any emotions.
No.
It was more like he was just, is this over yet?
Right. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
He tried to act like he was crying with Tammy because he got the napkins out, the Kleenexes out. He tried to act like it, but
he never made it happen, though.
It wasn't there.
But the color of his face never changed.
Never.
When you cry, your
or his
skin
eyes
color
never
changes.
glossed over.
He may have been sorry, but he was only sorry that he got caught.
Amen, sister. She hit the nail on the head with that. And again, remember when we saw that? So what she's talking about is a time when they began to going over Tammy's testimony, or, the testimony about Tammy. And at one point, Pryor touches Chad almost as if to say, go on, start up, buddy. And he gets, thank you. It's so fake. And the fact that they noticed this and gave more context, face never changed colors, eyes never glossed over. None of these things of crying that one does ever took place because he wasn't crying. He didn't feel bad. He felt bad that he got caught, just like she said.
But they were easily answered when we went back and looked through our notes, and everybody agreed. We didn't have any holdouts. Let's put it that way. We didn't have any holdouts that said, no, I don't agree that I don't think he's guilty. That it was just making sure that all the evidence that we had
supported what it said.
Supported it.
There you go. And now the juror number 9 will talk about this. I'm going to do a separate video on him, but he'll talk about that too. Where it's like, there wasn't a doubt in the damn room, okay? Which is so satisfying because like I said, you never know, right? So the fact that they were like all like, no, it's a done deal, right? Especially something like this where you just don't know where it's going to go. The case is so layered and so blurry at points. One of the things that Summer mentioned during her talk with Nate Eaton, which I found to be very interesting, was she was like, these aren't smart criminals, right? These aren't sophisticated people. Talking about Chad and Lori, almost like they just had dumb luck in some of these things, because if they were smart, they probably would have done A, B, and C in a different way. And she has a total valid point.
What was life like as a juror? The food, the bathroom situation?
Okay, the bathroom was a joke for me because for some reason I was paranoid. You better go to the bathroom before each, when you're on break, because you don't know what's going to happen, right? I can go at work 6 hours without going to the bathroom, right? Oh no, not apparently here. Every 2 hours.
Definitely bathroom
And
anxiety.
you had to ask, and we had one marshal that we jokingly called him Chihuahua because he was very nice, but at the same time he was.
I love to see this little bit of levity of, them being able to laugh and whatnot. And she said that was the whole thing. Because remember, when they're taking these breaks, they can't talk about this case. It's like you have to turn all this off and talk about whatever. So they found these moments, like with the marshals and people like this, to keep it light at times because it was so heavy, they said. Now, also with her, I put this in here because I was like, girl, I talked to some of you about this at Crime Karma. I was like, there's no way if I was a juror on something like this, literally the way I am, every 30 minutes I've been like, pardon me, excuse me. They'd be like, juror number 5, do you have a serious question? And I'd be like, no, I need to go to the bathroom again. And they'd be like, you're going to have to quit drinking water. This is the 5th time in an hour. I mean, literally, y'all, they would kick me off the damn jury. They would be like, look, we don't want him anymore. We need to discharge him. He needs to go. This thing's going to take 5-6 weeks. So when she was talking about that, I was like, I feel your pain on the bathroom situation.
Sequestration happens, you go back, you say guilty, then you have to go back and deliberate penalty. What was that like?
That was a lot harder.
It was a lot harder.
It was longer, but there was so much more at stake. I mean, this was a huge,
A man's
once in a life
Yeah.
decision.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to make sure that we got it right. And it took a lot more steps to make sure how we understood it and what we were doing was correct.
But the law was laid out for us very, very clearly.
Now, and again, I imagine this, just like she said, this was a little bit different. No questions at all, guilty. The next thing is, okay, you are, regardless of what you might feel about the DP and all that type of stuff, you are essentially signing off on taking someone's life. You know what I'm saying? Whether we think he deserves it or not, it's a heavy decision to have on your shoulders is what I'm getting at. So I was glad to hear them take this seriously and be like, this was a little more serious. Took more time. We really wanted to make sure that boom, 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 boom. But like she said, and we'll get into it further, the law was laid out. This is why it's so important. And one of the things that I really look for in closing arguments and whatnot is where they spell the law out for the jurors. Here is A, B, and C. This is what you filter this through to arrive at this if you're going to do this, and explaining it in very simple terms because, for us, people watching this and jurors or stuff like this, we don't do this. Well, I was going to say we don't do this every day, but you know what I'm saying, right? We're not like professional lawyers or, I'm not at least, but you know what I mean. Good Lord. We, me, us, whatever, we need it broken down like that. The jurors these people weren't really like true crime people, right? They didn't know much about the case that we probably knew more. So yes, you need to spell it out. I'm not saying that in a negative way, but that's how I would want it done for me is like, can we get pictures? Can we get it real simple? I need to know boom, boom, boom. Because as they've spoken about in this as well, there's so much information in a case like this, so many things, even no matter the notes or re-asking questions, things of this nature, it's a lot, okay? So to make that decision and to be able to say, I'm going to go around the rest of my life knowing that I checked yes and said, we need to take this man's life, right? I would want to make sure that I had gone through every single thing, that I was 100% sure that he was guilty, 100% sure that he had checked off A, B, and C for the mitigating factors and all this type of stuff. I mean, clearly in this case, it's like there's tons of them. And as they will say here shortly, and they've already said a little bit and alluded to, there was nothing from the defense, right? There's no redeeming qualities. I mean, a couple of little things, but not in the context of like, we need to spare this man his life, like A, B, and C took place. Let's, maybe life without parole is a little bit more important. They didn't even try for that.
But for the most part, I mean, in the end, we all agreed. It was every every aggravating circumstance was moved forward.
And there was no mitigating circumstances that Pryor had brought up, or Chad himself, that would given us a reason to say, even though there was this aggravated mitigating circumstance, it's okay because there's all this good stuff, that he did, or there was reasons, and no one gave us that.
I mean, that's the thing, right? All these years, he's had all these years to prepare for that, and that's the thing, you can't even get up there. I always go back to this case I'm about to mention, and that's the Rosenbaums. And when they were doing like the character witnesses at the end, whatever, the only person that she could get to come testify for her was the postman, okay? No one else was willing to get up there and say anything about this one. This speaks volumes. Chad has had years and years and years to come up with any kind of level of like, here's a circumstance that takes some sympathy on me, and nothing, okay? That speaks volumes.
I believe it was all there after, them showing the stuff he's been writing and and talking about for a long time. I think he just finally had a catalyst for it to all just
all came
come out.
And that was Lori.
Well, it was Lori, but it was also the group and the people listening to him and people believing him and Alex following him, and it just all...
He really believed the stuff he was writing, I think.
I love this part right here. I'm going to say this, y'all, if Julie Rose on not some kind of watch list, I don't know what to say. Okay, because again, I'll revert back to this. Summer, during her speech with Nate, was talking about, look, when this all began, Lori wasn't listen to Chad, it was Julie Rowe. That was her entrance. That's who she was talking about. That's who she was citing. It was this Julie Rowe nonsense. Well, the jurors are sitting here talking about this other stuff like, oh, he did this, he was reading that, he was doing this. I mean, literally, y'all, I'm sure all the people in this situation are on a watch list of some sort. Because my opinion is Chad is, I don't even know if it's an opinion. It might be a damn fact. He's still doing his thing. His daughter she did talk to him every day. The brainwash thing, all that type stuff. So listening to the jurors pick up on this and see this and like kind of give their theory on how they think it all just went through. And it's like that, again, I hate to say it, but the perfect storm. With Chad, it's like people were believing him. He was like drunken with the power, and then he had Lori, to go meet up in the damn portal with. You know what I'm saying? After hours, if you will. And it was this floodgate, I guess, and he was drunken with the power, and he went off on it, and that's what lies beneath with him. It's frightening.
But it's not totally over for them.
And I think it's awful that whatever Chad has put in his children's minds, that they will not even go to their grandmother's funeral.
They're not going to support their mom
after being raised with these people is just unbelievable to me. That's just a whole nother awful result of what Chad Daybell.
Amen. 100% couldn't have said it better. That's the thing too. So you know how I talk about, if you follow me, I talk about layers of victims all the way down to the jurors, all the way down to the jurors' families, like the level of the ripple effect of these crimes. So then when you sit here and listen to this, that's what's truly just like, huh? Look at Emma getting up on that stage, not going to do the thing with grandmother, talking about Tammy the way she is, that deadpan, robotic, I've been told what to say by my dad thing, and it's repulsive. And it's alarming to see what is she capable of. Will Chad continue to do this? Who is his next victim? Imagine, because you know how this goes, right? You know that both Lori and Chad have to already have people writing them in jail, like for nefarious, like, I think you're hot and I'm obsessed with you kind of ways, right? Who's going to be Chad's next? Who's going to be the next, and what will come of that? Because I personally think, as evil as he is, he has zero to lose at this point, right? So he's going to go off even more. He's going to look at himself like a martyr. You know what I'm saying? Like an absolute martyr. And be like, yes, I've been up here. Just like Jody Hildebrandt. Up there talking about like, well, I guess if I need to be in prison to sit here and preach the gospel or whatever. And it's like, oh my God. That's another one we need to get damn diagnosed with something. I mean, not trying to get her out of trouble, but I mean, the delusion and her and Ruby is strong, okay? And similar to this BS.
Do you think if he had come on and apologized and said, I was caught up in this affair, and showed something, that maybe he would have gotten life in prison?
Maybe that with, not just that alone, no.
Right.
If Pryor had actually shown some sort of evidence, like he said there was 300,000 other texts, well, show us one that supports your side of it. If there had been something like that, in addition to Chad saying this, there could have been mitigating circumstances then that wouldn't justify, that said that death penalty wasn't justified, but...
And there was nothing that came up out of either of them or out of him that said, I'm no longer going to do the Church of the Firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
All this. I've actually found the way, the light, the true God, the true Christianity. I'm at begging for forgiveness. I'm going to change my life around. That would have given me a little other feelings but there was nothing.
Might make the name of this damn video there is nothing. There was nothing, right? It's so fascinating because, again, so many of you that I just talked to at CrimeCon and in the live chat, it's not just crime. I know I keep mentioning that, but it's just, I'm coming off the tail end of that. So many of you that I have talked to said the same thing, where it's like there was literally nothing. And again, if you follow me, you know that my viewpoint on defense attorneys and things like that is we all want a defense. We all deserve a defense. We all have the right to a defense, right? Not only does it help to, number one, make sure you're guilty of whatever, but it also helps the prosecution, because when the defense does their job and they do it correctly, it can alleviate the need for appeals and things like that. Although it's pretty much a given you're going to have something go through, right? So, but to make sure that I's are dotted, T's are crossed. So with Pryor, do I personally like him? No, not really, right? I mean, I get that. However, you know, he's doing his job. Look at what he has to work with. You know, there is nothing. Trust me, if the perpetrator alleged, not in this case anymore, but you know what I'm saying, has something to work with, they're going to work with it. And if they don't, they don't. And that's why you see some of these things like making stuff up, like, you know, oh, we have over 300,000 texts. Well, show me, right? And if you can't show me, then don't say it, because it's not real. You know, and I get, like, he's trying to do his job. He's trying to save his client's life, basically. But unfortunately for him, he failed to do that in this situation.
No remorse.
There was no remorse.
I'm annoyed that this isn't over yet.
Right.
And you know, whether he still believes it or not, that was one of our questions. Is he a danger going forward? We all believe and said yes.
There are other children that he was raiding.
Yes.
Melanie.
And Melanie.
Is he going to go right back out there and start this whole thing up all over
Well,
again?
eventually the money would have run out, and then he would have had a life insurance policy.
Right.
Yeah.
But he would have found his next Alex, I believe.
And his next
Somebody
Lori.
who he could manipulate to be his, you know, his muscle, if you will, his warrior. He would have found him at some point, or her.
Exactly. And this is my concern going forward. This is my question going forward. Will he do this? Is Emma the next, right? Is she running the show for him? What is going on with that? Are we going to see books come out from her? This whole time she's shown this defiance towards the victims, towards her mother, towards who's both a victim and her mother, you know, and towards law enforcement, with her husband getting up there and talking about, you know, being upset that the cops are riding by the house and still keeping an eye on it during the active investigation. Made no sense and showed everybody the true cards. And this is what was very surprising. Now, maybe Chad at this point was like, I know I'm getting arrested, so we're not trying to hide anything. In fact, let's try and use this as a recruiting thing. I don't know. But I absolutely loved hearing from the jurors in this. I think they all were amazing. They did an excellent job. Clearly, I appreciate their job because the outcome was what I was hoping for, right? I probably, if they had let him walk, I would have been like, what? You know, what are they talking about? So I get that I have a bias in that. But I like how articulate they were. And again, I'll say it one more time. The fact that they were able to see all these things that we've been talking about and seeing, and that it didn't go unnoticed. I feel so satisfied with that. I feel so justified with that. Right, that it's like, okay, they saw it, they noticed it, and then some. This whole dynamic of we still consider him dangerous. You know, this is huge. I would be curious. I'm sure Lori's going to try and get in touch with him. You know, my understanding is that, and they might have mentioned this too, but I know Summer mentioned it. Of Lori doesn't even believe that Chad threw under the bus. Like, she's still drinking his Kool-Aid. You know, would run off with him in a heartbeat if she could, which is alarming. And so then you just kind of pivot everything to the kids, and not all the kids, but several of them, you know, especially the ones that we saw up there. But again, I'll say this, I do think that Garth probably is a little bit torn with a lot of stuff, right? So yeah, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be following, because more interviews are coming out with this, we're going to be following this, and obviously we're going to be talking about new cases that come up and whatnot. And so there's that. We're still going to be reading Visions of Glory, so be on the lookout for that. Now also, thank you so much for all of the condolences and whatnot with Roscoe. I greatly appreciate it. This is actually the first video that I have filmed without him, and so I appreciate all of you who have reached out to me. It truly means the world to me, and it warms my heart, and he has forever left, you know, his paw prints in my heart. So I appreciate all of you as well for seeing that and the joy that he brought all of us here at the Sofa Squad. So that is it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. I do appreciate it, and drop some sofas off in the comment section for Roscoe to come down and hang out there with us and talk about this case and others. And until he and I do meander our way down in there, we'll talk to you soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. Also, if you're looking for merch, be sure to check out my Teespring store. I'll put that up here. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Roscoe on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.